G'day, welcome to Pay It Forward. Today I am bringing you a really super quick and easy Easter pattern. I've been asked by so many of you, are we going to do anything special for Easter? I thought I would give you a few little projects that are really quick and easy. This is the ultimate beginner's pattern. So if you just joined me and you're not a sewist, this is the one to start with. And not only does it make up beautifully for Easter, it does make up beautifully just as a little bunny. And I know my masterclass friends, fantastic little companion for your art dolls. We're always looking for those, aren't we? So this really is so simple. You can embellish them as much as you like. You certainly can make them in other fabrics. I'll talk about that in the tutorial. So for now, you will need your free pattern, which is in the drop-down description box below. You'll find the link there. You can print out your free pattern on your own home printer. There's a big blurb there that I give you, instructions about how to go about printing. Do check the measuring bar that I put on every page to make sure your pattern pieces are correct. So let's get busy making this super simple little bunny. Let's begin by having a look at the pieces we're going to need to put together a little tiny bunny. I am making mine in felt. Now you do need to make the head in felt. You can make the body in a print cotton fabric, but you do need to make sure that you interface it. And of course, as always with my felt, I also interface my felt before sewing, and I'm using a fusible woven. Make sure it's a woven cotton interfacing. Just in a medium weight will be fine. So this little bunny, of course, is being made up in the off-white because my little chocolate one, here I can show you, already done. It's going to make a lovely contrast and they make a beautiful pair. So two body pieces there. Then we look at the base. So the base, we're going to need I'm using a 55mm wooden disc because I have them. A lot of you will have them. If you don't, I've given you the template for this, and you can cut out perhaps 3 pieces of matte board, very firm cardboard, glue it together with PVA glue, and you'll have the same thing, basically, a nice strong little base. As I said, your template is there for you for that. I'll be using that because it's very handy. And then to cover the base, we have another piece of felt. So even if you're using a fabric for the body, use a felt disc for the base. It just finishes it off beautifully. You can see there, really nice professional finish that we add to the bottom. So there's our base all sorted. On my design, I'm adding a little simple applique that I've given you. So I've got a little heart there in the pink. I've already marked the position of my heart, which I've given you on your templates as well. You can see exactly where that needs to go because it's much easier for us to do all of this work before we put the bunny together. And in this case, I want it to be the opposite of my other bunny so that they're looking at each other. So if you're going to make a pair, make sure that you put the applique on opposite sides. And then I've just got a little flower there and a couple of green leaves. They all have fusible webbing applied because we're going to press those into place. And then I do a little bit of machine stitching as well. I do add a little gold bead for the center of that flower. Now here you can add anything you like. You might have a little iron-on patch that you want to use. You could do some lazy daisy stitch flowers, which I've certainly shown you in our latest memory bear. Whole lot of fun you can have. You could embroider the whole body section if you want to. Just remember that you've got a seam coming around here. You don't want to interfere with any of those seams. And this section is pulled under. So it's pulled under about half of this disc, so don't have anything sitting below that. So just keep those things in mind. So that's our body all done. Now let's have a look at the head. The head is made up of 2 pieces, again, interfaced felt. Like I said, you have to make the head in felt because of the way that we put it together. And it has that lovely volume. I will add, I use felt on the body because I do like that it has a little bit of volume. Okay, so we've got our 2 head pieces. cut beautifully with that interfacing applied, and we have a filler to go in the middle. I'm using Fusible Foam, which is fusible on one side. In this case, I don't even use that fusible part of it. I actually use clear craft glue, but we're going to be sandwiching that in the middle between those two layers, and then we're going to be sewing that head together. If you don't have fusible foam, you can certainly use some fusible wadding or a couple of layers of plain felt. Your template is there to cut it out, and we can glue those in place, but you do need a little bit of filling. It just helps that little head stand out and hold itself to that lovely shape. On that little head, of course, we've got some eyes. I am using little doll's buttons, and they are 4mm. Perfect size. You don't want those eyes too big. 4mm is about perfect. And I will be stitching a mouth in pearl thread, and I'm using an 8-ply here because it's a little more fine, and I will be adding an extra little flower on the top, and I will put another bead there. Very, very simple to make this one. Now you need some pearl thread for sewing around the head. In this case, I'm going to be using a brown, which might seem a little bit strange, but it really outlines, when you're working with a very animated character like this, it really outlines that little head. Of course, on the chocolate bunny, I used the pink pearl thread for the mouth so that we can see it, and I used a black around the head. I did match on the bottom with that pearl thread, I did match it with the brown, and certainly I will do the same thing on the base, sewing on that base. So to attach the head, we need a button. This one is around about 20mm. It doesn't have to be a 4-hole button, it can be a 2-hole button. Just something that we can secure that head with. On the back, you'll need your extra strong threads and a little tail of some description. You could use a little shank button. I'm just using just a classic little pom-pom, which I will stitch on to the back. So we will be filling with polyester filling, and if you have a wool felting needle handy, that will help you a lot with our stuffing that body and getting it nice and firm. That's about it. Clear craft glue and we'll all be set. So let's get started by doing our little embroidery detailing on that body. So the first step for me is I'm taking that felt heart, which has my fusible webbing applied to the back. I've already marked there. Using a heat erasable marker, I've marked that heart shape in so I can see exactly where it goes. And it's going to match my other bunny. I'm going to press that into place using a hot iron and a protective cloth. So I now have that heart pressed into place. Do leave it to cool completely before you attempt to sew it. And of course, because I used the heat erasable marker, those marks that I drew on there are gone. So now I've got a single strand of extra strong thread, which is what I like to use for my embroidery and my fine applique. You can use stranded cotton, embroidery cotton. If you are, I would use just 2 strands for this. You can use the 8-ply pearl thread as well, but I think it's a little thick for this. So what I'm going to be doing, let me bring that up nice and close for you so we can see. And I'm going to sew a blanket applique stitch here. Now when I'm sewing any shape with a blanket applique, I always start on a place that's nice and straight. I wouldn't ever start on a curve. I'm bringing my needle up right on the underneath fabric, right on the edge of that shape. My first stitch, I'm going to come directly below it, and I'm going to keep these stitches nice and small. And I'm taking my needle through the heart layer and the underside, coming out right on the edge again. You'll notice that I'm bringing my needle out through the thread loop. There's my first stitch, and also notice I'm using a contrasting thread. I'm going to go and travel just the length of one stitch, keeping them nice and small. I've done the same thing. Captured the heart and some of the underside layer. Again, bring my needle out through the loop and pull that in tight. So what that's doing is creating the stitches and a little binding stitch across the top because we're going through the loop. And all I need to do is continue with that, keeping my stitches nice and even and pulling those stitches nice and firm each time. Make sure that as you work, when you're sewing a blanket applique stitch, make sure you're rotating your work as you go, because if you just hold it in the one position and keep working, your stitches will start slanting. You need them to radiate out nice and straight. So you can see there 4 lovely little stitches, might be a bit hard to see in the yellow, and I'll keep working away all the way around till I meet up the other side, cast off on the back. Now once you have that heart stitched into place, we're going to go ahead and add our detailing. Now each of these pieces have fusible webbing applied to the back, so you just remove the backing paper, which leaves that little bit of glue. Now where I add the flower on mine is on the lower half of the heart here, and I just want to position those little leaves underneath in a way that works. Just tucked out like that. So once I've got those leaves into position, I'm just going to remove the flower, keep those right where they are. Again, take it to my iron, hot iron and protective cloth, and press them into place. So with those leaves nicely in place, again, I've checked where my flower is going to sit and taken my heat erasable marker and drawn in just a stalk with a couple of little leaves at the bottom there, and then carried on across each of those leaves, because what I'm going to do now is take this to my sewing machine, and with a green thread I'm going to stitch exactly over all of those lines, and I do go over them twice. So I will start here, make my way down, back, do the little leaves, back again, back and forth over each of those leaves, and what you'll get is this effect here. And then we can take it back to our iron, press it, and all of those little marks will be gone. Now you could do any sort of stalk work here that you want to. This is just really simple and gives you a good idea. So I'm going to take that to my machine, get those green areas stitched in. So there you can see my stitching done. Those little leaves settled nicely in place. I've given it a press and those lines have disappeared. Now I take my little flower, which also has that fusible webbing on the back of it, and I'm going to position my flower where I want it and press that one into place. So there we go, little flowers pressed into place. And of course you can do all of this stitching by hand. You would just do an embroidery stitch by hand, a stab back stitch I would use. So now I've got my extra strong thread in an antique sort of a gold. I just want to do a little bit of detailing on the flower. So I'm going to come up right in the center. You can put a mark in the center if you feel you need to. I'm going to eyeball mine right in the middle. I've got a knot in the end of my thread. It's a single strand. What I'm going to do is just take my thread out and in where the petals would be naturally separated with each one. So I'm going to do that right the way around and give it a good pull in. Give it a little bit of substance there. Back into the center each time, and then I do like to add an extra stitch on each petal, giving it a little bit more definition. You might be sewing something completely different here, which is fine. This is, remember, my patterns are always a fantastic basic guide, and you can embellish them your way. So I'm just going to do an extra stitch down the center, not right to the end, just about 3/4 of the way down, just to give it a little bit more detailing. Back into the center again each time. I just think that's a really nice finish. I'd love to see some embroidered roses, all of you clever embroidery ladies. And you could even cover the entire side panel with delicious embroidery. Or perhaps you've got the perfect little patch you want to add. Or you could even make it very country style and put a little flannel patch on, a little bit of blanket stitching around it for a cutesy country vibe. Totally up to you. So that's basically my flower. Now I'm just going to take my bead for the center. I'm going to come up from the middle, go through that bead, just pass through a couple of times and secure it at the back, so it's going to sit right in the middle. If you don't want to add a bead, that's fine. This looks pretty just as it is. And there we go, my little bead in the center there. It does, the bead work does add some nice sort of 3D effect there. Now we are going to take our 2 body pieces now that all of our detailing is done, and this is where you make sure anything you want to add to your bunny, that it's all done now. Now we're going to put right sides together, those body pieces. We are simply going to line them up exactly all the way around. Super simple to make this one. I can see these being given out as gifts to co-workers, in sewing groups. You can even personalize them. You could put initials on them. Just crazy sweet. So I've got my clips there. We're going to leave the bottom open, and we are now going to overcast first. Always overcast first. That's just my rule. If you want to know why my finish is so good, it's because I never skimp on those areas. So an overcasting stitch to hold it in place, then take it to the machine, and you want to sew a 4mm seam allowance. Keep it nice and small, and so make sure you're back and forth on your start and finish all the way around. Watch those curves, because you want a beautiful curve finish. You don't want any staggering in your stitching. Right the way around, back and forth at the bottom there, and you can sew that seam 2 times, because we're going to stuff this quite firm. So do your next row of stitching straight over top of the other one. I have a jeans needle in my machine because I'm sewing with felt, and I have my stitch length set to number 2, so it's nice and small. It's going to give me a tight, strong stitch. So best way to stuff these is to take something like your forceps, start at the very top. We need that top piece there, that's where we attach the head. We need that to be quite flat, but we do need it to be packed very firm still, so keep your hand on the top of it and fill from the outside edge in. That's the trick. I'm going to continue that, working down the back of the spine of the little bunny, and I'm not letting it just completely blow out. So the whole time I'm filling this one, my hand's on it, until I've got all of those seams pushed out nicely. I'm focusing on the outer edge, doing my filling. That's the best tip that I can give you. I do have my wool felting needle ready, because that's going to help me keep the shape as well. But once I've got enough in there, I can then keep holding it in that kind of a shape, and I want to take my fingers in there and make sure everything's pushed out. But you can already see that it's not just a big ball, it's keeping to that eclipse shape. Now it does need to be packed very firm. That can be a little challenging without a wool felting needle because it's a small area here coming into a big opening. Stuffing something like that, it always wants to jump straight back out. So you can see I'm holding it, I'm keeping it in place. I'm going to keep adding my filling, still being mindful of that shape until I have it filled just about a centimetre from the edge. And by that time, it will be more of a circle shape here. And you want to take your felting needle and pack it in nice and firm. The best way for me to show you is to show you. So I'm going to get mine filled and give you a look. So this is how that little body should be looking. Really super firm throughout, beautiful shape, that nice eclipse shape that we were talking about coming out into that circle at the base. So now I've taken my wool felting needle and I have gone ahead and really packed that filling in, and you can see it's not coming out. It's very, very flat and it's very, very dense. So I now need to create a running stitch around the base. I'm going to start at the back. I have a doubled strand of extra strong thread in a matching colour, and I'm just going to sew just about 4 millimeters in from the lower edge a running stitch. I'm going to leave the tail ends hanging so that I can tie it off. So you can see, keep your stitches nice and small so we can pull that in around our little wooden or cardboard base. I'm going to keep going all the way around till I get back to my start. That has my stitching done and I've tied my first knot. I'm going to slip that base in and it should be a nice snug fit going onto our nice flattened surface. Push that in, and as we tie this in, it's going to tighten up that filling even more, which is awesome. So I'm just going to give a good pull on those threads, pushing that in, and you should be able to really pull that in until there's only just a little space. You do want to make sure that it's nicely centered. I will pull that in a little tighter and pull that in even further, and then I will knot that off at least 4 times before I snip my thread ends. If you don't have someone to hold that knot for you while you're making the 2nd and 3rd and 4th knots, go ahead and use your forceps if you have them to slip under there, clamp it and hold that first knot. Just a little tip if you've got nobody at home there with you to help you. So let me get that tied off. Okay, so with that all tied off there, we are ready to add the little felt cover that goes over the base. We just need some clear craft glue and we're just going to coat the back. That's just to hold it in place while we're stitching it. Try and get right to the edge there. And we're going to drop that in exactly over that circle. Make sure it's nicely lined up. Set that down. Press it into place and we're going to let that sit there and dry completely. And then we're going to come back and do our blanket stitching, blanket applique stitching around it. So there's my base in place there. Put that one aside while we have our glue ready and that's drying. We're going to go ahead and glue up our filler section onto our front face section. Now I have given you marks on your pattern templates for the eyes and the center of the little mouth area so that you get that little expression just perfect. Make sure they're in place. You probably can only just see mine there. This is the front of the face. I'm going to glue my filler to the front of the face. The reason why I do that is we're going to add the buttons and the mouth before we put the head together, and that allows us to pull in through the volume of this little filler piece and it gives a nice little sink in effect into the felt. So these are tiny details, but they make all the difference. So this is my front piece. I'm now going to take this side. Like I said, this is fusible foam, but I'm not going to press it into place. It's much easier just to use a little bit of glue. Just like I did the base. And here, it's really important that where you drop that in is going to leave enough room all the way around for us to do that blanket stitching. Pull those little ears out if they need to get them in the right spot. So you need space all the way around. Get that in the right spot, give it a good press down, and again we're going to leave that one to dry. Best way to press that into place, throw a ruler over the top. I'm going to let those both sit there and dry, and we're going to come back and do our stitching. So we are back, and I have both of my little pieces nice and dry. We're going to just start on the face here because we have to do some more gluing. So what I've done is I've taken my ruler, and remember we had a center point there for the nose and mouth. I've drawn in the little cross area for the nose and mouth. Just make sure that the nose is not as wide as the bottom of the smile. So it's just that simple, gives it that cute, easier to see on this one. You can see there. Okay, so now I've drawn that in heat erasable marker again. I'm using 8-ply pearl thread for this one. I'm just going to start up right in the top corner. I mean, you can just eyeball this, but it's so much easier to just to draw your line in and know that you're getting it perfect. Bring that in, go down to the bottom corner, nice and tight, and then same with the opposite side. And because we're sewing over that padding, we get that certain amount of bounce and pull in there. So that nicely stitched into place, keep that tension up and knot off on the back. Then I'm going to take it to the iron and remove those marks. So there we go, little mouth in place, and we are just going to sew on those buttons. So you might be using beads or buttons. Remember what I said, those are about 4mm, which is the perfect size for this project. If you can find something like that, that would be good. Now, because I'm sewing black eyes onto an off-white bunny, I'm just going to use my black thread to keep that all nice and a solid black. But if you are making a darker coloured bunny, like I have here, and you're adding black for the eyes, stitch them on in white because it gives you a little highlight to the eye and makes you see that eye way more clearly. It's a really nice little trick, but I wouldn't do that with the white. So let me get those stitched into place. Of course, you've got the exact marks to get those absolutely perfect. I have now those eyes in place, and we are ready to glue the back of our bunny's head into place. So I take the back piece, I've got my clear craft glue, and we're just going to do the same as we did before and just coat that. All over the back. You do want to get it around the edge because that's the part that needs to be closed. And then we're going to carefully put that in place. Exactly over that back piece. Want to line everything up. Make sure those ears are beautifully lined up. and press that into place again. Let me get my ruler to press that down, and then I'm just going to keep an eye on that and keep pinching those edges together. That glue dries pretty quickly, and we are sewing these edges together, so if you miss any little spots, it's not a big deal, but if you just keep it nearby while it's drying, give it a little squeeze. Check it from both sides, and we can put that aside while we go ahead and sew the base of the body. Now let's go ahead and sew the base in place. So I have a single strand of my 8-ply pearl thread in the matching off-white. I'm going to start just at the base here. I'm going to take my needle in underneath and bring it out. I bring it out on the body fabric, right on the edge of that disc. Doesn't matter where, and that knot can tuck in underneath. Okay, so this is the same blanket applique stitch that we did here on the heart. It's just that we're doing it in a 3D fashion. But the concept is the same. So we start, remember, the first stitch goes directly under there, where your thread is. I'm taking up some of that disc and some of that body fabric and bringing my thread through the loop, my needle through the loop to create that little binding stitch. Move along just a little, again, each time making sure you're capturing some of that body fabric because you're stitching the base to the body. Gives it a beautiful professional finish. If you're making these for gifts or to sell, always great to give it perfect finish. And notice that I am rotating my work as I go, as we said before, so all of those stitches will radiate out. Pulling it nice and tight each time so that it's bringing those two edges together, and we're going to give that lovely binding stitch all the way around. Let me show you on the little chocolate one. You get that gorgeous finish. All done. So our next step is to add the little tail. Let's do that. I have a double strand of extra strong thread in a matching colour. I'm showing you this on how to put a pom-pom on the easiest way. You might be adding a button or something different. What I'm going to do is take my needle about a third of the way through, straight through that pom-pom. Pull that through. It's a doubled strand, no knots in the end because I want to tie them off. So now I'm going to dive in. So I want my tail to sit about here. So I'm going to take my needle in either side of that seam. Same on each side. Bring it through. And then I'm going to tie it off. As I pull on that, I can tie it in super tight. Right up against, and we won't see any stitches there. Super tight, knot that off at least 3 times, and then you can take, if you've left your needle on, you can take your needle in and out and snip your threads and just snip these threads close in here. So about 3 extra knots will do it. There we go, little floof tail on. We can put that one aside, and now we're going to finish up on a little bunny's head, which is all nice and dry now. I have a single strand, I've got a long strand because I want to sew the whole thing, I don't want to run out, of 8-ply pearl thread. I'm going to start somewhere at the back of the head. I usually start halfway down the head on just a curved piece here. Just going to take that thread through the back. I'm going to enlarge that entry hole there just a little, just to pull that knot in. There we go. Now remember I said I am outlining mine in a darker colour, just so that it really shows up, and because it's white on white it will give more definition and you'll see the outline of the head better. You can use whatever colour you like. So I am going to start with my blanket stitch. Now blanket stitch on this one, let's keep it really small, so about 2 millimeters. We start the same as blanket applique. We're going in directly below that first stitch and bringing your needle out through the loop. Anchor that first stitch. Because it is just an outlining, keep them nice and small. So you go straight through with a blanket stitch, straight through both layers. Make sure you're going through straight, not on an angle. The stitch should look the same back and front. And it's just as simple as that. You're going to make your way all the way around that little face. Again, rotating your work as you go. And just want to show you one little tip before we go any further. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue on right the way around. When you are working with a darker colour like this, and remember we've put raw edges together, and there may be a white core showing on your darker colours of your interfacing, just take a permanent marker, just your Copic marker will do, any of your fabric alcohol markers that matches your felt colour, and before you sew this you can actually colour up that seam so that none of that white is showing. Just a little tip that will help you out. If you do have coloured markers like I have, hundreds and hundreds of them, you'll usually be able to match your felt colour. Just a good tip, because then we don't have any of that white showing. Of course it doesn't matter on this off-white one. So let me get that little face all beautifully outlined with this blanket stitch. I've got a double strand of extra strong thread on my longer doll needle. You don't have to use a doll needle, but I find it easier. And what I'm going to do is just put my button in place at the back of the head. We only use 2 holes, so if you've got a 4-hole button like I have, just ignore the other 2. But I'm going to take my needle through and I'm going to take it straight through to the front. Make sure you're going through straight, not on an angle. Pull that through, leave the tail ends hanging. That button will sit there on the threads. And then I'm going to position my head. I'm going to take a big stitch out the back of the head. Remember we said it was about the middle. And I'm going to take a nice big stitch across. It's probably about 1 centimetre. That'll give it a nice hold. Make sure it's absolutely parallel. And make sure that you're only capturing the back fabrics, not the front, because you don't want it to distort the front of the head. So I've pulled that through. Now I'm going to go back in just a little way across, right next to that first stitch, and then I'm going to come out the back next to this one, and of course bring my needle through the hole in the button, the opposite side. Let me pull it all through and show you what I've got. A little upside down, head at the moment. Right, so now I've got that little head is held into place, and if I pull that out you can see how that's done. So straight through from the button, through the body, through the back of the head, back again, and follow the path back again through the other side of the button. Then we can simply just tie this off. If you want to leave your needle on you can, but I usually snip it off because I don't mind snip threads at the back of that button. So I'm going to take that off and tie my first knot, and I really am going to pull on that and compress everything down. Now have a good look at it at this point, check that it's got some nice movement, and check that it's in the right position. If it's not in the right position, it's perfectly simple just to pull it out and do it again and change your position slightly. But this is about spot on for me. I'm really going to pull on those threads and knot that off about 4 times and then snip those thread ends. And there we go, and that, my friends, is a tiny little bit of Easter fun. And I think these should come with a warning because they are terribly, terribly addictive. They're just so quick and easy to make. You can imagine the colour combinations. Now remember what I said, you can certainly make up the body parts in a cotton print, which would be really sweet. You need to keep the print a nice tight print. Don't go for a large print. It needs to be a nice dainty print. And I'm sure there are some beautiful Easter prints and fabrics out there if you really want to take it to that level. Also remember, my masterclass friends, you could make this as a lovely little simple toy companion for your art dolls. And that lovely little bit of posability, it just makes all the difference. I think it's just one of the cutest little projects. I know a lot of you are going to be knocking these out in all sorts of colours, and I look forward to seeing every single one of them. Thank you for joining me today. It was a whole lot of fun. So what do you think? Can you see it in lots and lots of colours? I certainly can. I really want somebody to make it up in those Easter prints, and I think they will be fantastic. Imagine giving them out to co-workers, and the perfect little gift to go in an Easter basket as well. I'm sure you've all got even more ideas than I have, so I'm looking forward to seeing a big burst of colour on our Facebook page this week. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, come along and join us. We are a big, happy, friendly group. You can share any of your creations that you've made using my patterns, whether that be Pay It Forward here or Masterclass. We love to see them, and we're going to give you a whole lot of encouragement. I've been very inspired just the last week by all of your creations. I just cannot believe the growth in skills. I know so many of you who have been with me from the beginning, and the growth in skills and expertise is incredible. So I'm very excited. Thank you all for listening, but it's showing in your work, it really is. So very excited to see that. So I've got the link to join Masterclass. If you want to step up to Masterclass, you certainly can. I'll put that link down below. Also the link to come and join our Facebook page. If you're interested in a little bit of fashion, my daughters and I have a page on Instagram where we have a little play together, mother and daughters. It's all just a bit of fun. I'll put that there as well. So come along and check it out. So I just want to see this week you all have a happy, happy creative week. If you're looking for a break from a very advanced masterclass project, make a couple of bunnies in between. It's a great way to break it up. So everybody have a fantastic week. Keep on paying all those good things forward. Until next time, it is hooroo from me.